everyone, and someone's calling my house, of course. Hi everyone, I am Vee Mus'e and welcome to WizKids YouTube channel. I am here with Mark Meer this evening and we're going to be having some fun doing some painting together. I am very much excited. I've been waiting all week for this one, quite frankly. I don't know about you, Mark, but I have very much been looking forward to this one. We were just discussing offline how it's been literally about a year since we've met each other over painting a dragon, which is actually, yeah. So kind of like a fun little kismet thing that it all worked out. And I'm looking forward to working on, for those of you who may not know, we're doing the Nolzur's Marvelous Miniature Gold Dragon Wyrmling and Small Treasure Pile Miniature. So this is what we're going to be painting today. We each have one. So the way it's working out is my screen, that's why I have like the smaller head. So my screen is going to be showing you the miniature itself. And Mark, we get to see him a little bit bigger because, you know, he's live and in style. He's also going to be painting, but he'll be holding it up on his side as to what he's going to be doing. And we're just going to sit and chat and have some fun. So this is for those in the chat. If you have a question for Mark, please be sure you put in there question and then your actual question, because if you just type in a question, sometimes with the chat, it might zip by and we may not catch it in time. But if you put it right there, even in cap box, it really helps out in that respect. So just put in question, ask your question, and I will do my best to make sure I'm catching it so we can relay it over to our guest of honor. How's that sound to you, Mark?
That sounds good. So you'll keep an eye on the chat. I'll just worry about painting a tiny gold dragon.
Yeah, you can paint your tiny gold dragon to your heart's content.
Perfect.
Yes. Now, do keep in mind, I have a habit of naming my miniatures as I'm painting them. So it's up to you if you want to think of a name as well, or who knows, we might have some people in the chat offering names as well. But I'm seeing some familiar names already. It is so good of you to join us. Hello, Nathan, and hello, Paul. Thank you so much for starting up. What we're going to do is this approach that is one that I started doing probably about a little over a year ago. And we're going to be doing this, I call it my shadow layers thing. And what you do is you first start out with your miniature. Now keep in mind, these miniatures do come primed ahead of time, so it's totally take it out of the box. And you can go ahead and paint it, no problem at all. But what I like to do is we're going to start first with a straight up simple black from Vallejo Paints. We're going to paint this mini as well as the treasure pile mini black entirely, let that dry a little bit, and then we're going to move into a lighter color. It's actually called silver gray, and do a dry brushing technique. And this is something that is a way to make your painting a little bit faster, but also bring out more of the details of your miniature. And it gives it a really neat in-depth look to your miniature once you're done. And this is actually the technique that Mark learned from me at the castle too. So again, this is sort of like this fun, like coming for full circle again.
Yes, yeah. So, as you mentioned, it was about a year ago.
Yes,
you were teaching a miniatures painting workshop at D&D in a castle over in the UK. I was one of the dungeon masters. We had what they call Castle Day, which was the crossover between week to week and groups of dungeon masters, where we just had a bunch of fun activities like miniature painting, also falconry and archery and whatnot. Cool. But falconry and archery sounded too much like sports for me, so I decided to come to your miniature painting workshop, and it was great.
I am so glad you did. Yeah, we were like, it was like the crossing and the changing of the DMs, because I was the week before and you were the week following that, so it was really cool to get a chance to connect in the meantime. Otherwise, it would have been like, oh yeah, you know, there was another DM, but we didn't get to see each other.
Yeah,
so,
and I have to say that your shadow coat technique has come in very handy. I've been doing a lot of painting. I found myself stuck at home over the last few months for reasons we won't go into. But no, I have been using that technique almost exclusively because it really does work well, I think.
I love it. So I'm jumping over to a larger brush because this isn't, you know, finesse work. This is more get the black paint into everything you need. I am thinning out my black paint just a little bit, just with some water. Fun little trick to the water that you can do sometimes, and it's something I always do, is I'll put just a tiny little bit of Dawn or liquid dish soap, because that helps the paint kind of stay more thin and flow more evenly. It's a little bit of a cheap flow aid, essentially. So it's an old painter's trick. So basically just going to go in and we're going to just start getting this black paint on, and it does not need to be thick. The goal is really to get this into the grooves and indentations.
And there are a lot on this little guy.
There are. This little fellow has a lot of striations that are going on here, which will come out really with the next step.
And I think, I mean, it's early days, but I think I've decided on a name for my dragon already.
Have you already? That's impressive. What are you going to...
He is a gold wyrmling, so I'm going to name him Nugget.
Okay, I love it. That's perfect.
Mhm.
Nugget. That is sweet. I know. I'm thinking something maybe like along, kind of want to go daffodil because I also like to do very ironically cute names.
Yes.
So just a nice golden flower, maybe daffodil.
Although, I realize that Nugget is probably going to be really embarrassed by his name when he's an ancient dragon.
You know, that is true. You got to think about when they grow up, what's going to happen, how they're going to fit into it.
True, but that's not going to happen for hundreds of years. So
Yeah, so I mean, plus they can just change their name if they so choose.
that's true, legally. You have to go all the way to Waterdeep for that. That's where the office.
Oh, is that where they do it? Waterdeep? I wasn't sure about that one. That's good to know. So if you need to change your name, go to Waterdeep.
In the realms, anyway.
In the realms, of course. Yes. So, all right, you've been busy, like super busy painting many, many minis. I mean, I've been seeing them pop up on the social media, both Facebook and Instagram, oh, and also Twitter. So all of them.
Yes, I have been posting to keep myself busy, as I say at home. Pretty much every one of our acquaintance, I have a large box full of unpainted plastic.
I can't relate to that at all.
That was sitting around for a while, and I didn't really get started on painting until we were a month into things, after we'd already been locked down for a month.
Okay.
And I guess I just sort of exhausted my Netflix possibilities at that point, and just realized, okay, let's roll up my sleeves and get started. So yeah, I have been painting quite a bit lately, and that's good. That's good because I enjoy it.
That's amazing. How many do you paint a week, would you say?
Well, let's see. I'd say I'm getting at least 2 a week done.
That's pretty good.
There's usually some bigger pieces in there as well. Actually, I can show you.
I'd love to see
one of the larger ones. The red dragon that came out from Nolzur's not so long ago. I painted him. There you go. And his accompanying blast of fire.
Fantastic.
And let's see. Within easy reach, I also have this Etten, also from Nolzur's.
Uh-huh.
And this guy is also Nolzur's. He is an earth elemental. So a small sampling.
Honestly, if you go onto his socials and check out Mark Meer, it's usually Mark_Meer, right? For most of yours, or
I'm afraid I don't have unified.
You don't have unified.
No. So I'm Mr. Mark Meer on Instagram, Mr. Meer, and Mark_Meer on Twitter.
There we go. But those are good accounts to go and follow because not only do you get to see the minis, but you also get to see what Mark is up to.
Usually, something nerdy.
Something fantastic and wonderful.
Like, D&D in a castle or whatnot.
Right? Man.
And that really was quite a fun time last summer.
It was basically summer camp for DMs and players.
That's what it was.
It was fantastic.
In a real castle in the UK.
Yeah. What did you think of Lumley?
I loved it. I got to do both. I got 2 castles.
That's right. You got
Lumley and Langley, and both were great. They were very different, but both were great experiences.
I very much enjoyed how Lumley was sort of hotel and castle in one. So you got the whole castle experience, but you also had the creature comforts.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, Langley was much the same, but it was more. It looked more like a keep.
Interesting.
Than a palace. It was much more traditional in that sense.
Oh, that's cool to know.
You did expect it to be laid siege by orcs at any moment. But...
Yeah, no, that was the castle I was supposed to be in because that was the one that got seized.
Oh, right. Yes, of course.
Because that wasn't an unnerving email to get 48 hours before leaving.
Yes. But I really have to say that this, of course, was a situation that was beyond D&D and the castle's control, and they really stepped up and managed to reschedule everything in record time and with barely a hiccup, really. So,
they did a phenomenal job, and everyone was comfortable and having fun, even though it was like, behind the scenes, they were still getting things pulled together and ready. It was really, it showed, if anything, they can work under pressure and make sure it's still an enjoyable event.
Indeed.
It was wonderful.
And then, did I see you at Gen Con last year?
Yes.
I'm trying to remember if we bumped.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. We had a chance to sit and chat with each other, along with Jason Carl at the.
Yes, the excellent Jason Carl.
Yes, another one who's a DM for D&D in the Castle too.
That's right. Yes.
We tend to flock to each other, don't we?
And So yes, of course, I'll be sad not to see everybody at Gen Con this year.
Yeah, it was a bummer. But it seems like there's going to be online stuff at least, so that's good.
There will.
I'm happy about that.
And I mean, everything's online these days. So
yeah,
I actually got to virtually attend GaryCon this year for the first time.
Oh, that's great.
Send in pictures for the hashtag Hawaiian Shirt Day.
That's perfect. That's a lot of fun. Okay, so we have a question that just popped up into the chat. We have, what brand of brushes are you using? So I'll let you go first. What are you using?
Okay. For most of it, I've got, I believe these are Army Painter. Okay. I've got my dry brush is just one from the Nolzur's brush sets.
Mm-hmm.
And then I believe this is actually, I think, one of the brushes that you kindly gave me at D&D in Castle, which I think is just an art store brush.
Yes, it is. Oh, that's funny. It's lasted that long for you. That's great.
It was in my painting box.
Oh, well, perfect. Yeah. All right. So right now he's a little bit hard to see because of the black background, but
actually this palette I'm using was also one of the ones you gave from D&D.
Oh my gosh, how funny. Who knew? Mm-hmm. Who knew that'd become a keepsake? So I have my little dragon all done up in black. I'm going to shift over to the treasure pile.
Me too. I think I've just got a little spot of tail that I want to get in.
I am actually using brushes that my kiddos got me for Mother's Day last year. So they're very much just little El Cheapo brushes from a department store type of situation, like in the craft aisle. But they have this really great grip to them. So I like using them. And this chisel tip at the bottom, which when you're doing terrain stuff, I've been able to use for like scoring and things like that. So it's
nice.
By default become a set that I very much enjoy using. So I grabbed those tonight.
Now there are many little... This treasure pile is quite detailed, like the individual coins even.
Yeah.
Actually, they kind of look like...
There's some nuggets in there, I think.
Yeah. And
there's some actual nuggets, yeah.
Are they kind of shaped like coins from Waterdeep? Like
I believe
the gold dragons?
There are some gold dragons in there, yes. Now that I'm looking at the details. This is why I like doing the black on there first, because it helps it show the detail a little bit more as it sinks in. But yeah, it does look like there are a few. That's fun. I love the crown.
Yes, and is that a goblet or a helmet? The other
I think it's supposed to be a goblet.
Okay.
Or no, maybe it is a helmet now that I'm looking closer at it. I think that is a helmet because there is this detail work around the front.
Mm-hmm. It looks like little rivets or something.
Yeah. So, see. That's why I was like looking back. But yes, it is, let's see, do these have a name? Royal and Lang Nickel is what the brand is for my brushes. But that's what we're using brush-wise. And every paint we're using tonight is Vallejo-based. Vallejo is good enough to send us paint, so we're both using the same type of paint, which makes it so much easier when you're painting together.
Yes, and thank you for sending those paints all the way to Canada.
Oh, very welcome. They made sure you were ready and set to go. I was very appreciative of how quickly they got them to you.
Oh yes, got my minis, got my paint. It's great. Didn't have to leave the house for it.
Yeah, Paint to Life is complimenting you on your shirt. They say, love that shirt, Mark.
Oh, thank you. I believe this is a shirt from Beamdog from their release of Neverwinter Nights, the video game.
Ah, very cool.
And of course, I did a lot of voice work for them on the...
I was going to say.
Yeah, so on the original BioWare Baldur's Gate games and whatnot. And then when Beamdog did the enhanced editions, I came back. And it was really nice because that early Baldur's Gate stuff was some of my very first voice work in video games. And so I got to revisit the Forgotten Realms and play a bunch of new party NPCs and villains and whatnot in the enhanced editions.
Cool. So how did you get pulled into doing voice acting then?
The old-fashioned way. I went to an audition and got cast by BioWare back in the late 90s. And again, this was Baldur's Gate 2 was my very first video game voice work.
I believe.
Oh yeah, thank you for playing. They just kept hiring me. So
cool.
Go to an audition and then they'll just keep hiring you. I guess that's the lesson.
So what was your first role?
My very first role was in the final cutscene of Baldur's Gate 2. And I was one of the cabal of evil clerics that was doing essentially the "we'll get you next time" gadget speech. I believe my line was, "There is no need for concern. The fate of this fool is sealed."
I was going to say, do you remember the line itself?
I
That's
remember the line because
awesome.
it was one line.
Uh-huh.
And so literally, yeah, my very first voice work in a D&D in video games was in a D&D game, and I
Mm-hmm.
was in the final cutscene, so you had to play the whole game to hear my one line. But that one line apparently impressed BioWare enough that they kept hiring me for pretty much every subsequent game they did.
That's amazing. So then was the whole voice of Commander Shepard one of those things, like one thing led to another the more you worked with
Yeah,
voice
essentially.
acting?
As I say, after that initial work on the Baldur's Gate games, I got to play Cyric, the God of Murder from the Forgotten Realms. In that would have been Throne of Baal, which was one of the DLC or enhancements for the original Baldur's Gate 2. And then just subsequent work in various games like Jade Empire. I did demo work on the original Knights of the Old Republic, etc. So by the time that they came around to doing Mass Effect, I'd been working with BioWare for many years and tended to specialize in monsters and creatures and that sort of thing. So in the early sort of concept art stage of Mass Effect, I was asked to come in and create sound sets for the various alien races. And that's what I thought I was going to be doing on the game, was just mostly aliens. But during that process, I got asked to audition for the lead and didn't really hold out any hope of getting it, which is probably why I got it, because I was not nervous about it. I was like, well, there's absolutely no way this will happen. But I kept getting callbacks and eventually was informed that I had been cast. So I got to be Commander Shepard and a bunch of aliens.
That's so cool. Well, we got a lovely question that ties right into your whole liking to do monsters. What's your favorite D&D monster?
I tend to favor undead, and the pinnacle of undead is, of course, the Lich. So I think the Lich is probably my favorite. And of course, because I like undead, if you were going to go for like singular monsters, then Orcus has always been a big fan of mine. If you're gonna have like a end of campaign big bad, a lot of people like Demogorgon, of course. There's Tiamat. She has her fans, of course. I've always been an Orcus man. So
I like it. Very cool. Interesting. All right, I have my treasure pile and dragon done, but I want them to dry a little bit.
Yep, me too.
So how are you doing with yours?
I'm all done. My dragon, I may have slopped the paint on him a bit much because it looks like he's still got quite a bit of drying to do.
Okay.
We'll hold on.
Yeah. So we can always, if you want to, we can jump over to the flames.
Yes.
And get those going.
How are we going to do the flames? Because they are translucent.
They are translucent. So really what we're going to do is just some dry brushing with the yellow first and then move over to the red to give it a flame-like look, but without coating it entirely. Because when you do it with a dry brush technique, for those of you who are new to miniature painting and working with translucent plastics, if you dry brush it, the paint goes on it in a thinner layer so the light can still play through. So it won't be completely opaque. You can run into the situation with translucent plastics. If you paint them entirely with a usual coating of paint, it will end up making them more opaque and not get that light to play through. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with, it's just called flat yellow, and this is from the model color line. If you want your number, it's 70.953. If you want the number code. So I'm going to take some flat yellow. Yep.
The tiniest amount on there.
Just a wee bit. And then I'm going to jump into using a small flat brush like this one.
I got this one.
Perfect. And then basically dip the brush into the yellow and blot it off on a paper towel until most of it is gone onto the paper towel itself. Because what you don't want to do is take the brush with too much of a heavy load of paint onto it and then try and drag it across the mini's texture, because you're basically just going to end up with clumps and globs and painting more of a thick coat than you intend to. So you want it so it looks like it's almost all the way off the brush. And then you will shift over to the miniature itself and you draw the brush across the texture of the mini. And in this case, I see all these flame textures that are running this way, let's say west to east, if we're going to use directions here. So I'm going to pull my brush south to north and start having the yellow play out a little bit more. And in this case, you definitely want it to build up gradually, because again, we want that. You can see it's picking up as I put my hand behind it. You can see it's starting to pick up a little bit. What I don't want to do is start off too heavy, because it's easier with dry brushing to start off light and then add on to it. If you start off too heavy, it's much harder to pull it back. Let's put it that way. The paints we're using again are Vallejo paints. For those of you just joining that, I saw the question pop up in the chat. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go around first with the flat yellow and pull it across the flames. And I like the fact that the flames aren't attached right away in the dragon's mouth. It makes it a lot easier to add them in after the fact. Or I should say the Wyrmling, the wee little Wyrmling.
And I do like with most of the Nolzur's dragons, the flames do tend to fit in quite well, so you don't have to glue them in. And
yeah.
So for an encounter, you could have them with the flames or
without. Yep, that's kind of the purpose, that you can switcheroo and fix things and move them around as you need to. So it works out nicely for gameplay, for sure. Plus, it's just fun. Makes it more dynamic. Now, have you painted our beholder yet?
I actually have, sitting here.
Ooh.
He's actually sort of next up in the roster. He's the next one to come out of the box of unpainted plastic. So.
Oh, I'm excited to see what you do with him.
I'll be looking forward to painting him. Actually,
nice.
I think there's a griffin ahead of him in the queue, but
that's fair. All right, so I'm just holding up the flame right now on my screen so everyone can see the texture as it starts to come out by doing this dry brushing with the yellow. I'm just gonna do a little bit more and then I'm gonna flip it over and go to the other side. Yeah, I've painted a few of those beholders now and they are always so much fun, especially because I like to try and do something different each time. Because, you know, beholders, they all think they're fabulous and unique and one of a kind.
Of course.
So
I also like the variety of, I was going to say spell effects, but I guess it's I-beam effect that the beholder comes with.
Yeah, they have 4 of them, which is pretty cool. So 4 of the stalks, for those not familiar, 4 of the eye stalks actually pop out of sockets. So you can pop in the spell effects, which makes it a lot of fun. Though I have had people who have painted it and they end up just super gluing the eye stalks in and they're going, I don't want the spell effects. So kind of your prerogative.
True.
What you end up doing with it. I mean, your table. That's sort of my rule of thumb. Okay, so this is what the one side looks like with all of the yellow on it. Hold it up here so everyone can see.
I have finished my flame and I've jumped back to just touching up the treasure pile.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Lots of little crevices here.
Yep. You'll find that often happens when you're painting on black. I think it's because of just the wetness of it. Like the shine will sometimes look like spaces or the spaces will look like a shine. So as it starts to mat up and dry, you find like those little mist spots. It definitely is a thing. For sure. Let's see here. Looking in the chat. Leonardo says Elijah says they just got the mini earlier this year. It is a very fun sculpt. This little Wyrmling. The Wyrmlings are great. I've enjoyed them.
Yeah, the gold one in particular looks quite happy and triumphant.
Yeah, I like the way the wings are perked up high and in full like that. It's fun. It's very sweet. Yeah, Nathan said he prefers to keep the spell effects separate and mobile. It definitely helps. So, what got you into mini painting?
Well, I mean, I was a Dungeons and Dragons player from, back in the 1980s, back in the day, back in the Stranger Things era, as it were. In fact, I'm pretty much exactly the age that the kids in the show were in the 80s. So,
oh, that's cool though.
Yeah. So I was of course a D&D player, and you're going to want to play with some minis. I actually have a few of the old ones I painted back in the 1980s.
I think if you're going to offer that up, we definitely would like a chance to see what got Little Mark started.
There was a vampire I painted back in 1984, according to this. This was 1984. And here is a giant two-headed troll.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
I was pretty excited to get this guy because the giant two-headed troll was a new monster that had just showed up in, it was, I believe, either Fiend Folio or Monster Manual 2.
Oh, that's fun.
So yes, I'd always, as far as I knew, miniatures were an integral part of Dungeons & Dragons. So I'd always, from the time that I got my player's handbook, I had minis.
That's wonderful. Okay, we have another question that popped through. Have you done any live theater work, something like Shakespeare or the like?
Oh yes, yeah, certainly. That's I'm a working actor. I mostly work in theater, to be honest, and specifically improv theater. And I actually do a show called Improvised Dungeons and Dragons that I've been fortunate enough to do with folks like Henry Zabrowski from last podcast on the left, and Your Pretty Face is Going to Hell, and quite recently Mr. Colin Mockery from Whose Line Is It Anyway? And
Awesome.
we play it in full costume. All the player characters have all of their equipment, their weapons, everything. I'm the dungeon master, and I'm doing essentially what a dungeon master would do in a game. I'm playing all the monsters, but also all NPCs, townspeople, their mentors, people who give them their missions, all that sort of thing.
Oh,
And it's a very fun show.
that's
And yes, I have done Shakespeare and various other plays.
very cool. Oh, see, I really want a chance just because I know Goblin Katie, mutual friend of ours.
Yes.
She got to see you and she was raving about it. I'm like, I want to see that. So
Oh, this would have been when I was at Dad's Garage Theater in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
there. I actually exported improvised Dungeons and Dragons down there, so taught them the format, and I still occasionally DM with them as well. But they have a regular sort of season for improvised
Yep.
Dungeons and Dragons, and they are very funny. I recommend them highly.
Yes, absolutely. Completely agree on that one.
I usually do it with Rapid Fire Theater up here in Canada.
Oh, cool. Very nice. Yes, I know from just following along that you definitely do a lot of live performance stuff, and I think it's very enjoyable. Do you think that kind of gave you an edge as a DM, or did being a DM give you an edge for live performance theater?
It was the other way around. Dungeons and Dragons was my first drama experience. I went to school in a very small town that didn't offer drama as an option. It was either straight academics or sports. And so Dungeons and Dragons was my first improv experience, my first acting experience, especially because I was a dungeon master, so having to play a variety of characters. And so D&D is what led to acting rather than the other way around.
That's really cool. Like, that's very cool to know that it worked out that way for you. Because a lot of people I know, like, oh, I had a little of acting and then got into playing. So you have the flip side, which is really cool to know that it blended towards your career path.
When I started doing, actual improv workshops and things like that, most people had done it in high school, and I hadn't. I had always been a fan of things like Kids in the Hall and Monty Python, so I liked sketch comedy a lot, but hadn't actually done improv, except sitting around the table and having Barney Rubble be the innkeeper and that sort of thing.
Wait, I'm sorry, what, Barney Rubble?
Well, when the
I
group that I played with, especially, we tended to play for laughs, and we definitely would work cartoon impressions and celebrity impressions into the game. So,
Oh, that's so much fun. That really is great. How's your dragon doing? Think your dragon's ready for the next round, or?
He's a little wet on between the wings, as they say.
Still a little damp on the wings. What about your treasure
between
pile?
the wings. I think the treasure pile should be fine.
Okay, so let's start with the treasure pile, and we'll do that layer to bring out
Now,
the detail. And
Is
we're
this
going to
with
use it.
the silver gray?
Yep, we're going to use silver gray. So we're using the Vallejo Silver Gray, that's 70.883 from their model color line. The reason why I went with the model color line is the model color line does tend to dry a little bit more matte than the game color. I do find sometimes game color line has a satin-like finish with some of their paints. So I thought, let's go for a nice matte finish here. So yes, we're going to go in with the silver gray. I'm also going to try and fight a sneeze.
And this will be with the dry brush, of course.
This will be with a dry brush, of course. So I'm using that same brush that I used before. Rinse your brush. If you're using the same brush and you're jumping between colors, make sure you rinse your brush. Again, that's where having that little bit of soap in your rinse water comes in handy, because it really does make sure you get the pigments pulled out. There are different products you can use to help clean off your brushes. But I find sometimes it's just easiest to have the water set and ready to go. So same thing like I was showing with the yellow flames. You take that silver gray, you put it onto your brush, you get a good chunk of it off so it's not a heavily loaded brush, and you just pull it across the texture of the miniature, and it starts bringing out those details that are in the mini itself. So this is where it's starting to show off more the coins and the nuggets that are in this treasure pile. And we'll be doing the same thing with the wee little Wyrmling. to bring out its details too.
Yes, I do like this technique for that.
I do too, and it's one of those things I kind of fell upon because I have an art background, and I had an art teacher who taught us how to work from the negative space out. So it was one of those things like, let me try and apply this to working with minis. And there's a similar approach called zenithal painting, where you use straight up white to highlight. But with this one, I tend to do a different bunch of layers of grays to work up the level of colors. And I find once you put a thin layer of the color paint on top, you get this really great depth to your details by doing it that way. And you can assembly line stuff too. So when it's like I need to crank out 5 minis in a couple hours, I'll do it that way.
Oh, little guy.
Are you talking with Nugget?
Having a word with him. Having a word.
How do you think Nugget would sound?
I think like a British school child, probably. He's lawful good. Very proper.
Hello. Oh, I love it. Hello. That's awesome.
Are you adventurous? That's what it is.
That's perfect. So when you go to create your PCs or NPCs, how do you start? Like, what's your method in terms of, do you go with a person?
When I'm playing or when
when you're playing, creating?
Well, sometimes it's fun just to roll up a random character and then try to make him make sense. But if it was something for a longer term campaign, sometimes, as mentioned, impressions are a good place to start. And it doesn't matter if it's a good impression, because especially if it's a bad impression, then it will seem like a completely unique character.
There you go.
It can be. But yeah, for the most part, I usually try to come up with, as a player, concepts. You know, trying to find like an interesting take on something. Or sometimes it's fun to just play like, I'm playing a dwarf fighter who has an axe. You know, I'm going to be the most basic dwarf I can. But as a dungeon master, usually it's served by narrative, like what I think is most narrative interesting.
Cool. So, with the many PCs you've had, do you have a favorite?
Oh yes, there's quite a few. I'm of course playing. You may have seen him if you've watched D4, that's DM'd by Dustin and Devin. Kaiservex, who is a cleric of Bahamut. And he's lots of fun. He's a dragonborn, and I've actually been playing an alternate version of him in a D&D game with some friends from the UK and New Zealand. And since lockdown happened, we've been playing online twice a week. So the campaign has got fairly advanced. Kaiservex himself, I think it's clear to say that he's an alternate universe version of the one that I played before.
Oh, that's cool.
He is a lot of fun. Let's see, there's also October, my warlock of the Great Old One. He's a straight up Cthulhu warlock. But not evil. He's not evil.
Not evil?
No, he's true neutral.
Oh.
Cthulhu is beyond such petty concepts.
Well, I like that. I like that a lot. Just for those of you watching, I've jumped over to still using that silver gray paint, and I'm now going across the Wyrmling's texture. And as you can see, it starts bringing out the wing details as well as the musculature and the scale work on the body. We did get another question come through, and this is for you, Mark. Are there any artists that inspire how you paint your minis?
Ooh. Well, yes. I mean, I know quite a few excellent mini painters. My friend Andy, if you happen to follow the Old Hammer painting group on Facebook, he often posts stuff in that. And yeah, he's an amazing painter. I try to live up to his stuff. Also, a friend of mine, Darren Steele. Even though I've been painting a lot more lately, I tend to reserve end bosses for him. I want my end bosses to have like a really spectacular paint job, so I will usually go to Darren for that.
Fantastic.
And of course, painters that I follow, and I guess through events that I've actually had the chance to meet. Method Man is an excellent painter and a very nice guy.
Yes, agree on both of those statements. Very cool. This is the part I love because you start getting all the details coming through. It just makes it so much fun to see. It's also the one I like get obsessive about sometimes if I'm painting for myself. I'm like, oh, I'll go do another pass again. And another fun trick is if you're going to do, I'm going to show this right here with the plates on the neck. It helps if you draw the brush against it. So instead of pulling the brush down, I'm actually going to pull it up to really bring out the edges of those plates on its throat and under its chin.
I'm really liking this silver gray as opposed to, I usually just use white or light gray.
Yeah, it's one that yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying, it's quite good, especially for a dragon.
Yeah, it's one I stumbled upon when I got the model color line, and I realized it's great for, and there's a reason why I went with this one too. It also has a slight warmer tone to it, and because we're working with warm tone golds, I wanted to be sure that the base was a warm tone and not a cool tone.
Right.
Which is why I went for this one instead of a straight up white. But yeah, it's definitely one I've added into my rounds when I go and do this with other minis for sure. He looks so pleased with himself. The little expression on his face. Yeah.
He's a happy guy. You know,
he is.
Like I say, they're lawful good.
Very good point. I love the little British school child voice.
Yes, gold dragons would be very proper even at a young age, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So
Not
then,
like those brass dragons, they're so chaotic.
Oh, I don't know. So then, when it came time for you for D&D Live this year, since you were the host, how did you?
I got to host Reality RP.
Yes, you did. So how did it grow for you with creating that particular character?
Well, they came to me, the folks that were doing Reality RP, most of whom I was already acquainted with, and mentioned that they were looking for a host. And it should be fairly obvious what Shakespearean reference they were going for by naming the wizard Prosperon.
Right.
So I had a good roadmap to work from. And he was described to me as the mad wizard of Icewind Dale, who was warden of Rebel's End. So you know, I looked in my box of costumes and saw a gray-haired wig and beard and thought, yeah, that sort of fits. I also had, actually, I can show you.
Oh, yes. We always love show and tell.
I had this headdress, which I hadn't actually got a chance to use in anything yet. I picked it up at Dragon Con last year. Okay. And because he was sort of a crazed northern wizard, I thought that this seemed to fit well with him.
Oh, definitely.
And the rest of the costume, like normally, if I was doing, you know, a costume for a show or something, I'd have access to all of my friends who are, you know, costumers and work in the industry and that sort of thing.
True.
But I pretty much had to put Prosperon together with what I had in my house at the time. And luckily, I have a lot of things in my house, specifically costume pieces and things like that. So it was sort of a mix and match put together, and I was pretty pleased with how it turned out.
That's awesome. Now, what about, you had a hand puppet, correct?
Yeah, I had a full body puppet. He's upstairs.
Oh, it was a full body puppet.
So
okay.
I'd have to run away to get him. But,
yeah, no, you don't have to run away.
Well, you know what? I'm actually waiting on my stuff to dry, so I will run away because I think he'd like to show up.
Okay, sure. Then you go.
Back.
Okay, you go get him. Okay, so while Mark is going to get his lovely little full body puppet, I am going to work my way into the inside of the wing. Similar technique. You will find when you're doing this particular technique, it does help to rotate the miniature around and get into different angles, because oftentimes trying to keep it in a steady set pattern will get difficult when you get to certain points. So you're going to see I'm really going to be spinning this around and getting into the various, I like to call them nooks and crannies, you know, like the English muffins. So very much just keep turning it around, and you'll find as you're doing this, sometimes it helps to go back over areas you've already covered, and you can actually do another layer, and it's going to further enhance things. And oh my gosh, there it is.
Hey, Vee.
Hello. Long time no see.
He was Prosperon's familiar. during D&D Live.
Uh-huh. So
And
where did you get the puppet?
I bought him from some folks called the Puppet Forge.
Okay,
and
really
I
cool.
believe I bought him at Rose City Comic Con in Portland.
Okay.
I believe Puppet Forge is actually based in Minnesota.
All right.
Yeah.
So it was just sort of kismet that you had it around then.
It was basically, I was forced to rely on the things I had in my house, and luckily I have some cool things in my house.
Well, I think that's really awesome that you're able to do that and pull that into play.
Mm-hmm. And again, Boris was, I bought him a few years ago and hadn't actually used him for any projects or anything, so it was nice for him to have his debut.
Oh, that's excellent. That really is fun. Let me see here. I know we had a question crop up while you ran upstairs. Have you ever just thrown current lore out and said, screw the color guide, I'm going to paint my gold dragon bright pink with the neon green highlights, or something to that effect? Thank you.
Yeah, that's the fun thing about minis, is like you really can paint them whatever style you like. And that's the cool thing about D&D. You could have a neon pink dragon show up in your campaign and have it become an integral part of your campaign lore.
Absolutely.
You're the dungeon master. You're calling the shots.
Although my players pulled a fun one on me last night. They encountered a keg mimic, and now they have a pet keg mimic. Because the cleric decided he wanted to try and tame it, and darned if my rolls were not lousy as anything. And he was getting really good ones. So I was kind of sitting there, I'm like, you know what? Let it happen. It's too funny. It's a short campaign. They were enjoying it. The viewers were enjoying it. Yes, you have a pet keg mimic, which they named Jenny. And its serial code is 8675309.
Perfect.
Yep.
Yeah, I believe there's actually a pet book mimic in the D4 campaign named Biblio.
Yep. Goblin Katie was talking about that too when we were chatting afterwards, because she's in the same game as the pet keg mimic. She's in it too. Yeah, so we had fun with that one last night. But I love doing miniatures off the cuff and not according to lore. I know some of my followers are in the chat and they have witnessed it firsthand in some of my painting streams on my channel, but we had fun with a troll who is now a hot pink troll with bright electric blue hair and a cheetah print loincloth, and I gave him a microphone stand because it looks like he was singing into a microphone.
Perfect.
So that was a lot of fun to do, and I've also taken the Umber Hulk and made it look like a jewel beetle instead of using the browns. So that was fun to do. But I'm just gonna take a pause here and show you. This is what it starts to look like as you get that layer on. And as you can see, it really brings out those details greatly. And I think what I'm gonna do is just one more little sweep around, and then we can start shifting over, because the treasure pile is also drawing nicely. So what I'm going to do is just a little bit more on my Wyrmling.
I think I'm about done as well.
Yeah, just a few more touches. I think there was another question too that maybe came through. Let me double check. So we're getting a question as to hardest technique you've encountered for painting, I'm thinking they mean.
I'll let you two field that one, because I just found your technique and stuck with it.
Oh, okay. That works. I think for me, I do have an airbrush, but I tend to use that simply for like doing like mass prime everything at once type of thing. I have not been able to get into using an airbrush, and there are some extremely talented artists out there who do these gorgeous miniatures using just their airbrush, and I am in awe of it. But yeah, I can't seem to get a grapple on using an airbrush for some reason. I prefer having brush in hand for my own personal preference.
Yes, I've never mastered an airbrush either.
Yeah. I mean, it's what some people can do is truly phenomenal.
I've seen amazing effects with rendered with an airbrush.
Yeah. I mean, especially for like blending colors and everything like that, that really...
Yeah, and just amazing sort of spell effects and lighting effects.
Well, there's also that one source light the OSL stuff. That's personally, I think for me, my eyes don't like, if that makes sense. Because
you're not a fan of that.
Yeah, like I've seen it done. There are a few artists who do it and they do it beautifully, and I will fully get behind it. Like Chris Gorka does an amazing job with it. I mean, it is always spot on when he does it. But for me, whenever I have personally tried to do it, it just doesn't look right. So I think it's one of those things I'm like, I will admire those who can do it and do it well. But for me, I'm kind of like, not my deal, not my style.
Alexander Habas, Eldritch Foundry, made me a miniature of Albaeus Malcantor. I believe Alexander used that technique. It looks really cool. I have no idea how he did it. I don't think I'd be able to pull it off.
Yeah, I mean, it really is incredible. Wonderful stuff. Let's see here. Oh, how are the dragons attached to the pill bottle? That's a question that came through. I use blue tack that you would use for posters. It's nice and sticky is what I'll use. What about you, Mark? How did you attach your
I'm just using some transparent plastic tape, which was the first adhesive that I laid hands on. And I've just stuck him on top of the little blister pack that he came in.
Yeah, it's a lot of people use. Some people can get like the more like the industrial style double-sided stick tape you can get in the hardware stores for carpets. I've seen that get used. There are also there are now these little like those glue tabs. Have you seen those for arts and crafts stuff?
I've not seen those yet.
They're called like glue tabs, and they come in circles, and you can actually use those too, and they peel off quite nicely as another option. So those are something that you can put to use for attaching your minis. And there are mini holders out there. Absolutely. Some you can do 3D prints of, some you can purchase off of, various stores that also offer miniatures. I tend to do just empty pill bottles filled with, you can probably hear it, filled with sand, because it helps weigh them down. Or I'll use, this is an empty bottle now filled with water. For my treasure pile one, but I'll do that just because I find it makes it easier. So this is my little Wyrmling. I think I'm going to call it done for his layering. I'm happy with how this is looking.
I'm just hitting the very top of his little wing fringes.
Oh, perfect. I keep saying I want to take a few minis like from a line and do them all just like this, because I love how it ends up looking like a sketchbook. I think that would be a fun way, just as a stylized way to do a set of miniatures together. So I'm gonna put that one down there, and what I'm thinking is I'm gonna move over to doing the treasure pile. How does that sound to you?
Sounds good.
All right. So
we've got the shadow coat on it.
Yep, we'll let that dry on the dragon to make sure it's nice and dry before I move on. My treasure pile feels pretty darn decent, so I feel good about moving on with that one.
I'm gonna switch out my treasure pile for my dragon on this blister.
And then I think we have 3 metals that we're working with. So there is the straight up old gold, which is the 70.878. And then there is silver, which is 70.997. And I know it's not a brass dragon, but it is a nice bright gold that looks similar to what is on the packaging and the color guide. So I'm using brass, and it is 70.801. So those are the 3 colors we have in metallics that I thought would be fun for doing the treasure piles. Now, the art on the back of the box does have it so that the treasure pile is a mix of gold and silver, as you can see there. I will leave it completely up to you to do however you see fit with these. However you want your treasure pile to look.
Okay.
I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the brass for that helmet and for the crown, and then drop down to the other colors for the piles themselves.
Cool.
And I am going to, just want to make sure I'm rinsing my brush. I forgot if I rinsed my flat brush. That could be a problem.
You said you're going with the brass for the crown and helmet?
Yeah, the brass for the crown and the helm. So they kind of, literally they stick out more, make them stick out even further. And then I'm going to drop down to a more fine point brush here and start using that, just so people can see. And I will thin the paint just a little bit. When it comes to thinning paint, a lot of it is also just personal preference and style of the artists themselves. I find if it's coming out to be like the consistency of toothpaste, then it's definitely too thick. I like to work the paint so that it's like a heavy cream or a maple syrup texture flow. And I find that works really well with this technique, so you can still have the shadowing play through the color of the paint.
Well, when you said maple syrup, I knew exactly what you were talking about.
Well, I figured, Canadian, that would be helpful. Yeah, that would be a helpful reference.
That's a good point of reference for all Canadians.
Well, I found that like giving food products is a safe way to explain texture and consistency. Yeah. Because a lot of people can identify with things like ketchup or toothpaste or milk. It's always fun when you start talking about terrain. The texture of cottage cheese, I actually had to use that one time. Things you never thought you'd have to say.
I think cottage cheese is difficult terrain, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Your movement is half.
So the goal here is you don't want to have the paint completely blot out the shadow work that you've done, because as this dries, what happens is that the lighter paint will show through but take on the gold tone, and the shadows underneath will deepen, so it already does like that highlighting work for you. That's why it's important that you make sure you thin the paint out when you go in to do this with this particular painting technique.
Now, question, are you going to paint the inside of your helmet or leave it go?
I did paint the inside of the helmet.
I might try not.
Go for it. I'm gonna get the crown now. So when you're painting, do you find you have any I found out, and this is from my viewers when I was doing streams on my channel, when I do streams on my channel, I tend to make faces for certain techniques, I guess.
Oh yes, I'm sure I've been doing it the entire time.
I was gonna say, do you ever catch yourself making a face?
No, I'm doing my best not to look at the feed right now.
There you go. I know for eyes, I always stick my tongue out between my teeth. It's like I gotta think. It's the same thing with the crown, folks. It's still just a nice thin paint so that the shadow work can play through. And oftentimes, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, the more I look at this, the more I'm thinking, maybe this isn't a helmet. Maybe it is a goblet.
Is it? It's hard to say. I mean, I thought that,
But please go on. You were saying with the technique you...
with the technique, when it comes to using metals for this technique, you definitely want to make sure the paint dries completely before you decide if you need to go in and want to do highlight work, because the metals take a little bit longer to dry and take on the tone. Because of the shine, it tends to look like it's completely obliterated when it really isn't. You just got to have a little patience with it. So I'm going to show you right there. You can see how the shadow tone plays through there as the helmet's drying. Let's see here. I'm just taking a quick look at the... And thank you so much, because I see a few familiar names. I'm also seeing some fellow coworkers from WizKids. Thank you for joining us and answering those questions. So super helpful. Little Wyrmling, replacement franchise for My Little Pony, says Nathan. Well, I'll have you know, we do have My Little Ponies from WizKids, and they're fun.
Really?
Yes. And we have Transformers too.
And the Fantastic Four, from what I hear.
And the Fantastic Four. Have those as well.
I've got the old Galactus, and that new Galactus looks very tempting.
Oh, well, that's very good to know. I might know someone. Yes. I'm going to shift over now to Old Gold, since I've gotten the brass on the helmet, or the helmet cup. What are we going to call it?
The receptacle.
The receptacle. I like that. The receptacle. And I'm going to shift over to Old Gold and just sort of go around and paint some of these up, just so we have some variation. It's going to be completely random. There's really no rhyme or reason to it, besides I'm just going to put a little gold here and a little gold there as I work around. I am going to make sure that paint is thinned again. Now, when you're painting, do you normally paint with like a movie on, or are you painting with music on?
Usually it'll be music, or a podcast sometimes.
Oh, that works. Any particular type of music you tend to flock towards when painting?
Specific genre? I do tend to listen to a lot of Tom Waits.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
When painting.
When painting.
But it'll usually be, whatever the most recent thing.
That's fair. Yeah, I definitely
listening
like
to actual D&D based podcasts is fun.
Mm-hmm.
To do when painting.
Yeah, agreed. I will definitely put on podcasts and listen to those for sure. I also find I listen to like documentaries, like historical ones.
Sometimes I like listening to a podcast because there's a lot of just sort of lore podcasts out there. So just listening to a lore podcast about the monster that I happen to be painting.
Yeah. Yep. I will do. I have very much done the same. I go into YouTube and I just plug in the monster and then queue up a line of I want to watch this and I want to watch this and I want to watch this. That's another fun thing to do for sure. Do you have a favorite lore channel?
I really like the Dungeon Cast, actually.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean,
cool.
It's, two young guys giving their take on various monsters and whatnot. And I know most of it because I've been playing since first edition. I know most of the stuff. But it's fun hearing their take on it. And they're pretty funny.
Yeah.
They're quite funny.
Oh, that's good to know. My kids love to listen to Jordan with a PH. It was fun. I was teasing him one time. I'm like, you do realize that sometimes I'll get up in the morning and I hear your voice. I'm like, and I'm sure that sounds very creepy, but it's true. But yeah, my kids have very much jumped into Dungeons and Dragons and they love it.
Good to hear.
Yep.
Have you showed them the 1980s Saturday morning cartoon version yet?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, good.
Oh, absolutely. We have watched that. Mm-hmm. So they got to watch that one, and that's been fun. They have both officially DM'd now.
Lovely.
Yes.
Now, of course, if you watched the cartoon recently, you can probably attest to the fact that it's a fairly tame cartoon.
Yes.
But I do recall back when it was on TV that people were protesting it as the most violent cartoon that's ever been on television.
And now it's like, oh no,
no
it really was not.
It really wasn't, you guys.
It was quite adorable.
Yes.
I enjoyed watching it.
It was all part and parcel of the, shall we say,
panic.
The panic that was going on.
Yes, the thou shall not issues that cropped up. So I think what I'm going to do is get a little bit more here. Now, we are winding up to the top of getting to 6 o'clock my time, and that is what, 4 o'clock your time?
Yes.
So I think what we're going to do is I'm going to work some silver onto this quickly and then take a break. How does that sound to you? We'll finish up the treasure pile and then take a break?
That sounds good to me, and then the dragon should be all ready.
That's what I'm thinking. Then we can switch over to the... So I'm thinking we'll finish our treasure piles, and then we'll jump into, like 5 minutes? Is that good for you?
That should do for me.
Okay. So we'll take about a 5-minute break. That doesn't mean you have to go. For those of you who are hanging out with us, you are welcome to hang out and keep chatting with each other in the chat while we take a quick breather. You're also welcome to go and grab a snack or maybe grab dinner and sit and have a bite with us type of situation if you want to do that. But we will be returning and working on the dragon itself, which should be a lot of fun. But I just jumped over to straight up silver. And I'm going to go through and hold on.
Just making the odd random coin silver? Is that what you're going to do?
Yeah, I'm putting a little bit more silver on the pile because the dragon itself is gold.
Right.
But, do what speaks to you too. But yeah, that's a fun little... Moving into platinum, how's that?
Yeah, why not?
And the fun thing will be putting the wash on this, and it'll definitely sink into more of those little details. But yeah, the cartoon was a fun little trip down memory lane to watch that.
Yes, and you know they actually. Have you seen the sort of radio play version of the final episode?
No.
They never filmed it, obviously, but there was an episode where they did get to go home. They managed to find their way back to Earth.
Oh, that's cool to know.
Yes, and they, I believe it was at a convention where they had most of the cast together that they did essentially a radio play reading of that script.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh, I'm gonna see if I can hunt that down.
I'm sure it's on YouTube
I
somewhere.
was gonna say YouTube probably is the best bet for that one, but yeah. Oh, very cool to know. Thank you for mentioning that.
No, totally.
Appreciate it. So yeah, this is my treasure pile with the more silver than gold, just because, like I said, we have the little dragon who's all gold. A little bit more. So you have all these lovely little bits and pieces. Ta-dum! Let me just quickly see here.
There we go. I peppered some silver in there.
Lovely. It's looking good. I'm excited to get the paint onto the dragon, the little Wyrmling. And then we also have the, we'll finish up the flame as well, because I really wanted to make sure that yellow was nice and dry before we go back in and just do another round with some red in there. So that'll be on our to-do list when we get back. So I think what we'll do now is Jake will flip us over to our wait screen. We'll be back in 5 minutes. And so hang tight. And until then, see you soon.
See you in 5.
Bye. We're back. Told you 5 minutes. So
Mhm.
welcome back, everyone. My dragon is looking perfect for painting. I am quite excited for this little Wyrmling. For those of you joining us now, we took care of some work ahead of time by priming this fellow. It comes already primed. Painted it all in black, let that dry, and then we went back in with a nice silver gray and did a dry brush technique to bring out all these details. And now what we're going to do is go back in with our metallic golds and start giving our gold dragon Wyrmling some color using these paints from Vallejo. The important thing about this part of the technique is that we are definitely going to be thinning out our paints because we're going to be working these like a glaze, essentially, is how this works out. So if you were to take a look at the back of the packaging, you can see that our little fellow it's a darker gold for the majority of the body, and then down the throat, the neck, and the underside of it is a lighter, brighter gold. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to start with old gold and get the throat and the neck and the underside of the tail and all of those spots. And then we'll move into working with the brass color from Vallejo, because that's, again, it's a darker, brighter gold, which I thought would be a good way to have it look similar to how we have it presented on the back of the packaging here. So I'm taking this old gold, which we had just previously worked with in our treasure pile, and again, thin that out, because you want the paint work that we have done ahead of time to play through. You don't want this to be full and thick right out of the bottle. It's not going to work well that way for this. But just adding some water. And it is important that you make sure that your rinse water and your thinning water are not the same water. That's a mistake that has been made in the past. Do not recommend. Because you'll carry some of the pigments from the other paints into the paint you're thinning, and that tends to muddy things.
And so you said the old gold, we're going to go, that'll be like his underbelly and throat.
Yeah, like down the throat and the stomach and everything. Basically where like the larger plates are. And you will find with thinning metallics, you want to make sure you definitely mix it nicely so that it's a consistent color. And then I'm going to go in here and just start adding it in. Starting with under his chinny chin chin.
Are you going to go all the way up to, so the entire underside?
Yeah, I'm kind of like taking it just the underside of the chin, like along the jawline with that bone, and then bring it down. I find it helps to kind of run down one side and then turn and do the other side as well, especially with the plates, the way they stagger. Now, have you painted a gold dragon?
This is my first.
This is your first?
My first gold dragon.
Oh, well, there you go.
I tend to do evil monsters.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, what was your favorite evil monster that you painted then?
Well, like, I was quite pleased with the way that red dragon came out. It
did come out beautifully. It really did. Your blue dragon was good too. I remember that.
Oh, but yes, that was the dragon that we painted.
Yeah, yeah. You did a great job with that. It looked fantastic. All right, this is always the fun part when you get to the angle where you're like, how am I going to reach it? So those of you who know me from painting streams, I'm pulling off screen because I need to pull this close to my body so I can actually see. But this is one of those angles where I cannot get to it and keep it in frame. My apologies, folks, but...
That's for his belly there?
Yeah, that's for his belly zone that I'm trying to tuck in and paint and get to. Okay. Yeah, now I can see it again. Again, just carrying that old gold through. And the reason why I'm starting with the old gold is also because it's a lighter gold, so if for some reason there is a slip of the brush, it will get covered up by the other one. Hold on. Yeah, I have a few dragons downstairs. Not all of them are painted, though.
So yeah, I think I've currently got a red, a green, a gold, a black.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't have any white dragons painted yet. I've got some pre-painted white dragons.
I did paint a white dragon. That was a fun one to do. And that was recently.
And I haven't painted a green dragon yet, although I've faced 2 green dragons in combat recently.
Oh, interesting. I have killed a black dragon. Cat Triel took down a black dragon. She had the killing shot, which was fun.
Yes, I had the killing shot with a guiding bolt on a green
Excellent.
dragon.
Excellent. Okay, this is another out of frame deal. Sorry. I cannot reach that section and keep it. So I fought a green dragon. I have fought, what was it? A blue one, I believe. I've half painted a green one because I was painting it on someone else's stream, and the stream was only an hour and the miniature was far too big
Right.
to finish. And I get home and I realize that the paints they used are the paints I don't have. So I need to try and track down those paints so I can actually finish the dragon, that or just strip it down and start over. One of the two. And I'm just doing a little thin run of the gold along the base of its tail right here along the ridge.
Oh, I'm discovering that there was a little bit under his legs that I didn't get with the black. So
Yeah, it's...
go in and get that.
Yeah, get up in the undercarriage.
Yeah, it is exactly in the undercarriage.
Yep. That's always fun. Sometimes there are miniatures where you almost want to apologize, like, I'm so sorry, but I need to get into this angle.
Nuggets. It's okay.
Oh, that's right. I have one of my players, Erasmus Expeditions. He's saying, we killed a white dragon. You killed the white dragon. You're the one who did that killing blow. But yes, there was a white dragon. I put it to sleep. I wanted to keep it alive.
Yeah. Oh, I saw something in chat that Devin actually pointed out. My earlier joke about there being an office in Waterdeep where dragons have to go to officially change their name. He pointed out that, of course, dragons can't actually go into Waterdeep.
Oh.
So it's a real bureaucratic snafu.
Oh, geez. Well, that's unfortunate. So as long as you're not a dragon, you can go to Waterdeep and change your name. But if you are a dragon, Baldur's Gate maybe?
There's a form you have to fill out.
Okay. Like an absentee ballot type of situation.
Could be.
Absentee name change.
And now, are you hitting anywhere else with the old gold?
I am thinking I am going to leave it for now. I was debating maybe doing the claws in the old gold, but I'm not sure. I'm still thinking upon that one because we do have some. There's the horns and everything. I think I might actually just go right to the silver gray and keep the tones more matte for the horns and the claws. But if you want to go in there with the old gold, by all means.
I like the idea of the silver for the claws and horns.
Okay, cool.
And also his little sort of...
Yeah, the little protrusions that poke through. Yep. Yeah, I'm thinking that could be a fun little way to highlight that through. But I am happy with how this is drying and keeping the highlighting coming through. So I think it's going to be it for me with the old gold. And then jump into the brass. Oh, over here. Let's see here. Oh, what you looking at? Hello there. Thank you for stopping by. Looking into the chat right now and see if there's anything else. And remember, if you have a question for either of us, for Mark, for myself, make sure you type in question so that it pops out before you ask the question itself. In terms of the ratio for the mixed paint with the water, Adrian, like I said, I go more for consistency because all paints will come out differently from bottles. You can buy the same exact paint from the same exact brand in the same exact color, but for some reason the consistency will be slightly different the next go around. So in this case, what I'm aiming for is like a thick, heavy cream consistency for these particular paints, or like a maple syrup, as I said earlier, is usually your best bet for this particular technique. You could thin it down so it's even more runny. You may find that it turns it more into a wash. So you may have to go back in and do more layers with that particular dilution. So something to keep in mind. But I'm jumping over to the brass now from Vallejo. Again, thinning it out.
And you're using this for his main body and wing.
For the main body and for the wings, yep. And making sure it's nicely mixed. To get those metallic bits of glitter blending into. I'm just gonna have a little bit more water, I think. Yeah. So have you jumped into doing any PCs or NPCs for your painting miniatures? Or do you keep mostly to monsters?
Mostly it's been monsters thus far. I did really enjoy the new Warlock character that came out.
Yes.
The one that where his high level version actually has the Wand of Orcus. And I actually got, as I mentioned, I get my friend Darren Steele to paint my end bosses, and he would definitely be an end boss. If he's got the
oh, there you go. Very cool. All right, so I'm taking this brass and I'm just sweeping it on, and you can see here, if I get the light the right way, you can see how the color goes on, but you still get the play of the shadows and the highlights coming through, which is exactly what I want. If all of that goes away, that means your paint is still too thick. And it pops out even more as it dries, which is the fun part. But you can see now it takes on this gold color, but you still get all the details there. There we go, right there. Now this is I think my 5th Wyrmling that I've painted up. I've done red, I've done black, I've done blue and white. So I'm missing green, aren't I?
Yeah, what does the Nolzur's green dragon? He comes with the afflicted elf, I believe.
I honestly don't recall off the top of my head.
Yeah, he's essentially got a victim who's like choking on his
fun
gas cloud, which I like.
Well, you know, hey, tells a story right then and there. Whoop, keep it in the frame. Oh my gosh, he's such a cute little fellow, this little Wyrmling.
A little guy.
Do you remember Land Before Time?
I do, yes.
He'd fit in nicely with the Land Before Time crew. They're plucky little go-get-em attitudes.
Exactly.
And this is literally just getting the paint on. And you can see how it's still showing up, but now he's gold. And I see that Erasmus is saying, I paint so slow. This actually does help when you're trying to do faster work on miniatures, for sure. Like, I know if I need to get a few minis onto a table quickly, I'll do this technique without hesitation. I also made the mistake of making dinner in the crock pot. So right now it smells really good.
Oh, I see.
So if you hear my stomach rumbling, because that has been happening, like it'll pick up in the microphone. I'm hungry, okay?
What you got cooking in that crock pot?
I decided to go with some pulled barbecue chicken. Yes.
I bet that smells pretty good.
It does. It's like that honey barbecue sauce type of approach with some garlic and onions for good measure. All right, so here you can see what it looks like as the paint gets onto the dragon. Just to give you an idea of how this technique works. But yeah, I really like doing this. Oh, and we have another question. Jake, thank you so much for throwing these through. Vee Mark, if they ever do a remake of the D&D cartoon, which characters would you like to play? Main characters, villain, guest NPC? Thanks. And this is from Leonardo. What was that?
Venger. Yeah, no question.
There you go. I love doing villain voices in a heartbeat. I have fun with them. So sign me up for any of the villains. Those are always good.
Now that I think of it, I'd Shadow Demon.
Shadow Demon?
Shadow Demon would be fun.
That would be fun. I mean, why not both?
Why not both?
Why not both? You've done both.
They're probably both going to be CG, so.
Exactly. Now, have you gotten involved with motion capture type of acting?
No, I have many friends that do it. I myself am pretty much strictly the voice actor. So
okay.
I have well, not strictly a voice actor, but I'm not a mocap actor.
Okay.
I have not worn the suit with the ping pong balls.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. If that was a venture you've looked into. Yes, thank you, Michelle. She has confirmed the green Wyrmling comes with an afflicted elf. Black Wyrmling comes with a pile of bones. Blue comes with a pile of gems, and red comes with a pile of gold. Thank you so much. We have confirmation of that. I'm gonna get this up on his little chinny chin. You can tell I'm starting to concentrate because I also get quiet.
Yeah, there's only so much chatting you can do when you're
well, there's also that fun little thing that happens. I call it the Zen of mini painting. And every single class, even the classes that I teach in person, I know when it hits because the room itself gets very quiet. And people get very, you see they're concentrating and they have these pensive looks on their faces. It's really kind of a cool thing to experience with people all together. And they're getting so into painting their miniatures.
Yeah, it was really fun in the workshop that we've had at D&D the Castle, because of course we're in a castle, we're in a big ballroom, and everything gets very quiet.
Yes, you're right, it got very quiet. I forgot about that. Like we were hearing the people outside who were doing the falconry stuff. That was fun though. Oh well, we'll wait a year and we'll go back. We have that at least. I'm just getting this worked into the back of the neck. And I am working around the horns on the top of the head. Oh, but this is such a shiny, bright, cheerful. Yeah, I'm definitely going to stick with daffodil for mine. I'm liking this. Pretty little flower. Now, what about Tiamat? Would you ever want to paint a Tiamat?
Oh, yes. Yes. Now, I know that there is a Icons of the Realms Tiamat.
Mm-hmm. There is one.
A Nolzur's one would be exciting.
That would be something fun, wouldn't it? Well,
especially because you guys, I have seen the previews for the upcoming gargantuan dragon.
Yes. Yes, that would be very much a fun thing to explore.
Because you'd want Tiamat to be the biggest of the dragons.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to argue with that one at all. Tiamat's definitely one that would be a fun one to explore doing, with all the different colors going in on it. To that scale, for sure. Oh my goodness.
Oh yes.
Absolutely. Now let's see. We're getting on to 6:30 my time, so we're actually right on track. This is good.
About a half hour left.
Yep.
Let's get it done.
Yep. So we'll be able to get this done and get the washes on, and Bob's your uncle. Or maybe not. I don't know if Bob is your uncle or not.
I have no Uncle Bob.
You have no Uncle Bob?
I do not have. Not personally.
Trying to turn this so people can see. But yeah, it's basically the same thing. It's just keeping this paint nice and thin and moving it along all the areas you want in this particular color, and making sure it's not too thick so that the highlighting work will show through once it's drying up. Let's see here. Okay, we have a question. What techniques translate from role-playing to voice acting and vice versa?
Ooh, interesting.
That is a good one. Yeah.
Well, I would say improvisation, because of course the lessons that improv teaches you can be applied to many facets of life. But I do find that, of course, obviously it comes in handy when playing Dungeons and Dragons, because when you're a DM, you might have your adventure all lined up and planned out, and And then you'll find that your characters just want to talk to a random goblin in the tavern and find out what he's all about, as opposed to the carefully crafted NPCs that you've lined up to be story hooks. And you have to just be willing to go with the flow. And if they just want to hang out with this goblin, you better come up with a storyline that fits in for him on the fly and immediately. And all DMs know this.
Yes.
But improvisation also plays a role in voice acting. Now, not in terms of I'm going to make up a new storyline and do something that the writers haven't planned, but in video games especially, you very rarely get your script ahead of time.
Oh, really?
No, yeah, usually just for the sake of secrecy and whatnot, you're basically showing up at the studio and getting your lines for the day. And obviously you're going to get multiple takes on it, but you are essentially approaching it as a cold read. So being able to drop into character immediately, being able to think on your feet and roll with punches, these lessons that improv teaches you, yeah, they come in incredibly handy, just as they do when you're around the table in your DM.
Huh. That's actually fascinating to know, that you don't get a set script to walk in with.
In some cases, and usually when you're working on smaller games, but if you're working on big games, yeah, you're not really, they're not giving you a script ahead of time.
Wow.
Because again, they don't want.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
The less people who get emailed copies of scenes and whatnot, the less chance of them leaking out.
Exactly. No, it does make sense. The reasoning behind it. It's just I wouldn't have ever even considered that to be a factor. That's really cool to know.
Yeah. So there will be some voice gigs where you'll get as much prep time as you want. You'll have the script ahead of time. You'll be able to play around with it and whatnot. But a lot of the time, you're doing your exploration in the booth as well. So it pays to be efficient.
Interesting. Now, you also have to make sure you're there for the, not just the speaking stuff, for like, you get punched, you have to make the getting punched noise and stuff, correct?
Yes, those are the exertion ballots. We generally save those till the end of the day, and they're all done at the same time. So you'll usually spend the last half hour or so of any video game voice session you do just grunting in the booth and making sounds of getting hit by larger and larger objects, or okay, you've been hit by an object, now you're being hit with an object that's on fire. Now you're being hit with an object that you. Now so that's
okay, so just for the sake of education and enlightening, what does it sound like when you get hit by an object that's on fire?
Okay, so here's hit by an object. Here's hit by an object on fire. Here's hit by an object that electrocutes you.
I love it. See, again, would not have even thought that would have mattered for clarification. That's fascinating.
It won't matter in all games, but
right, but still, the fact that it's a factor for some that's amazing. I think that's very cool. Really. Let's see, anything other coming in here? I think we got that one. Yeah, the chat, our moderators being absolutely awesome. Thank you, moderators, for jumping in and responding to questions.
Now, what color are you thinking of using for his base? For the
we're gonna have some fun, and we're gonna mix some paint and aim for a brown. Because we have orange, red, well, we have yellow, red, and black. So we can get to a nice earthy tone, blending those together. I thought that would be a fun way to do it. The other option is you can actually just take the washes and do a few rounds of the wash.
Oh, I might try that, actually.
Yeah. If you want to do that, we can do that technique. Because we're going to be doing the sepia on its body, so we can very easily shift down to the brown wash, or the umber wash, I should say.
Now, for myself, there's some of the deeper shadows that I haven't actually sort of covered with paint. Do you ever do that? Do you like leave some of the black just?
Oh yeah, yeah. Especially if it's like in the darker places, so to speak.
Yeah, the undercarriage.
Yeah, the undercarriage. I will very much just sort of let it you know, get as far as I can with the color, but then let the shadows take over. Definitely. I will do that for sure. And sometimes they're just angles you cannot reach. Mm-hmm. Just not at all. But here's how my fellow's looking with the gold layer on there. Yeah, I'm almost done. I just have like a couple little spots I need to touch, literally with some color.
I just need to go in and get the edge, the demarcation between his throat and his belly and his the rest of him.
Yeah, that makes sense. Noticing I missed a couple spots on his face that I'm going to go in and get. But yeah, this is looking like a happy little dragon.
Yeah. Are you thinking the silver gray for his eye?
You know, I was debating about the eyes. I think I might do the silver gray. That could be, or the straight up silver could be fun too. Yeah, I think I will.
Silver?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm gonna do the silver in the eyes. I'm also looking at the eyes themselves. Yeah, those look like little eyelids right there. So let me just quickly get that too. There we go. Do a quick little like QVC spin around.
Yeah, it's a little silver for his eyes. And do you like silver gray or silver for the horns?
I think I'm going to do silver gray for the horns because I can see the horns being more matte than having the metallic glow to it. So let me go first to silver and do those eyes before I forget about them. And then I'll switch over. I'm actually not going to thin. Whoops! I'm not going to thin my paint. I am going to jump down to a smaller brush for the eyes. It's got a little bit more of a fine tip to it.
You think the silver gray for the teeth as well?
Yeah, I was going to do silver gray for the teeth, absolutely. And then there we go. Oh yeah, I like the silver for his eyes. That's fun.
Yeah, that's nice little pop.
Yeah. That magical glow. And then for those of you who are getting into painting miniatures, and especially with humanoid-like miniatures, if you ever find you have a problem painting eyes, turn the miniature upside down so that its head is upside down to you. Because what happens is your brain will no longer matrix it as a human face, and you're able to see the space of the eyes better. Fun little painting trick. Here we go, those little silver eyes. Really does feel like he's just about to break out into song with the way he's positioned.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, now moving over to silver gray to get those teeth and the horns and the claws. And again, I'm not going to worry about thinning the paint so much for this one because I do want that to have a little bit more of a intense color. But still with a finer point brush. Pedicure time. Yep, just quick little
Teeny little toes.
Mm-hmm. Just taking the tip of the brush and literally just getting a little dab of the silver gray onto each claw. I may have to pull out a frame for a second, I'm thinking. Yep, gotta pull out. Sorry, people. Pulling it out of frame. Ha! There we go. There was no way to get the back ones. And now the teeth.
Yeah, I'm having trouble. There we go. The inside toes on the back of it.
Yeah, they're the tricky ones. They're harder to reach for sure.
They got them.
Yeah. I'm just running my brush lightly across the top of the teeth and the mouth. Now, the reason why I am not going to paint the inside of the mouth red is because of the fact we have the flame detail.
Right.
And I find when you go to paint that in red, sometimes it will either get worn off or it looks weird because you'll get that edge of red not quite lining up properly with the flames. So
just looks like he's been eating his lipstick.
Yeah, it's kind of what ends up happening. Gives it like a lipstick look to it. So I tend to keep the mouth just darkened. But if you're painting and you want to give the tongue a little bit of red, absolutely go for it. Let's see here. We got another question coming through. What has been the most challenging role in your career thus far? And what role would you like to take on for the challenge?
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, in many ways, Commander Shepard was a challenging role because, of course, there is no set Commander Shepard. Commander Shepard is largely determined by the player. So Commander Shepard could be everything from, or anything, from a complete by-the-books Boy Scout essential character to a borderline sociopath who is still saving the universe, but just not being very polite about it. So yeah, that it's an interesting thing that it was a challenge both Jennifer and Hale and I faced was what is the core of Shepard, and ultimately we came up with the aid of our directors that the core of Shepard is a military officer who's used to giving commands under stress and in combat, stress of combat, etc. But other than that, it's pretty much wide open. It's largely influenced by the character, or by the player, rather.
Yeah.
The character that I would like to play, I've always been a huge fan of supervillains, and Doctor Doom in particular. And he's been in a lot of video games and cartoons. So yeah, I would say Doctor Doom.
Doctor Doom, interesting. Very interesting. It's funny, I wouldn't have considered that with Commander Shepard, that being a factor, that because of how the players proceed through the game, that it would affect the overall tone, and it's a malleable character.
Yes, and of course finding the balance, because not everyone plays either pure Renegade or Paragon. And so being able to find the balance so it didn't sound like you were having wild mood swings if someone was going back and forth between the Paragon and Renegade options.
I like that, wild mood swings. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've gotten the silver gray onto the horns and the protrusions on the jaw. I actually went and I did a little bit on the front back legs right there. But he's looking pretty darn set. How are you doing?
Here's my guy.
Lovely. So I think let's let him dry before we go and do any wash of any type, because I don't want to have the paints bleeding into each other type of situation. So set that aside, rinse out the brush, and you want to work on that flame effect a little bit more.
Let's go back to the fire. Awesome. I may have gone a little light on the yellow.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, that's mine right there.
Yeah, yours is a bit more vibrant. I might need to put a little more yellow on mine.
Go for it.
What are you going to do with yours?
I am going to jump over to the flat red now and use that to do a much lighter drag of the red across the top portions of the flames to highlight those a little bit more as well and give it more of a flame effect that way. Because if you look at an actual bit of flame, you start off with the lighter color. The closer it gets to the heat, it starts off with a lighter color, and then it goes out to the red flames. So I want the red flames more at the top portions of the surface of the flames than deep down inside the grooves. Is where I'm going with this one. So this is just flat red, like I said before. It's 70.957 from Model Color from Vallejo. And it's another dry brush technique. So get that onto my plate. And you don't need much for this. You really don't. I am going to move my dragon just a little bit farther away because I don't want to accidentally hit it. It's going to look a little innocent. Let's see here. Let's send back to that flat brush as well.
Well, I've put a little more yellow on mine, and now I'm going to play catch up and wait for that to dry. Okay. And then I'll be doing the same thing as you.
All right. I mean, depending on how much you put on, you could jump into the red. You're just going to end up, and that actually it'll look cool still. You'll have some oranges mixed in.
That might not be a bad idea.
Yeah. So this is just very lightly going across the top here. kind of see coming through right there. I think what I'll do is I'll get a little bit of white paper and place this on top of white paper because that'll show it off a little bit more. But same as before, just pulling it across the texture of the flames, but not being so heavy-handed because I don't want this to get too deep inside the grooves. And let's see. And we have another question from Leonardo. Only got into D&D a few months ago, never played a game, but seen a few games on YouTube thinking about DMing. Do you have any tips for someone who has no practical experience? So what tips would you give to a new DM who's fresh to it completely?
Well, the main objective of a DM is to tell the story with your players. You're essentially collectively creating a narrative. So don't be too, as I mentioned before, don't be too concerned if the plans you have go slightly awry. It's more about playing with your characters, give and take between the players and the DM to craft this narrative that will be entertaining not only for them, but you should be having fun while you're playing too.
Yeah.
It shouldn't all be work for the DM. You should be making discoveries alongside your player characters and pursuing those narrative paths that open up just as the result of play.
Very much agree. I'm of the DM school where the DM is also another player. We just have more PCs to deal with than others. Is sort of the way to look at it. But yeah, it's, you know. And a lot of times I think, especially for new DMs, you get worried and caught up about like, but what if I don't know the rules? That's okay. You learn as you play, both as player and as DM. And if you're not sure about a rule at that time, if it's something where you can keep kind of telling the story and forgo the rule itself, you just kind of follow rule of cool at that moment.
Yeah, never be tied to the rules.
Yeah.
If the rules are going to get in the way of an enjoyable evening with your friends, then the rules should go out the window. And let narrative and fun be the things that reign.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. And plus, you tend to miss a lot. You know, I find, especially the ones who will sit there with a rule book and they're flipping through, trying to get it exactly right. Sometimes I find that causes you to even miss the enjoyment of the interaction with other characters. Because you've stepped out of the fantasy of it and you're now back into literal world leafing through a book instead. So it's always one of those things you can look at the rule later and fix it accordingly in the future. But yeah, just have fun with it. Enjoy. Absolutely. All right. I think I'm getting this into focus. You can see the red is going at the higher points here. Let me see. Do I have this paper towel? Let's try that. There we go. So you can see how I've kept it more towards the surface. You can see the red playing off the yellow there.
Here's mine.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of orange is in there, as you mentioned.
And you can still see the light playing through, which is the end goal. You want to make sure it's not completely covered in.
And still translucent.
Perfect. Then you done did it. And I love that the chat is also adding in some comments, which is fantastic. It's great when the chat is being very supportive and helpful with each other.
Oh, good.
Yes. And there's some good bits of advice. Very nice.
This was for our first time DM? Excellent. Yes. Relying on the online community is a good way to go.
It really is.
When seeking advice.
And don't be afraid to ask questions. It's okay to ask questions. Even of your players, if it's something where you're not sure and you have a player who's definitely experienced, it's okay to be like, hey, off chance, do you know what this is? And they'll be happy to jump in. Okay, so we have pretty much everything pulled together. I think we're going to be good for washes. How are you feeling?
I think we're ready for the washes.
Excellent. So let's start with the umber wash for the treasure pile. And the umber wash is basically, it's a standard brown wash, essentially, from Vallejo. So this is the wash. It's 73.203. There you go. Now, I will say with Vallejo washes, you are going to want to thin them out because they are very much pigmented. So again, go into your thinning water, not your rinse water. And you want to add, I usually do like about a drop to a drop when it comes to washes. So almost equal parts paint, equal parts water. And then it thins it out so it's more of a, let's say soy sauce. How's that? I'm trying to keep it in a food reference.
Sure, yeah. And what brush would you advise using with it?
I am moving on to a wider pointed brush. Okay. And just going into the treasure pile and applying the wash, letting it soak through into the grooves. You don't want it to puddle too terribly much, but just making sure it gets on there, and as it dries, it'll darken a touch and it'll really enhance the details that much more. You said you wanted to try the wash on the base, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what we'll do for that is slightly different than what we're doing now for the treasure pile. But now you can see it's gone in and it's heightening the details that we have going on for this treasure pile.
Right, that's really nice.
Yeah. And you want to make sure it dries. All right. It's very tempting to touch your mini as the wash is on there. Don't do it. Don't touch the mini. Let the mini dry before you start removing it or anything like that. Oh, everyone helped Leonard. That's awesome. Thumbs up. I love seeing stuff like that.
Well done, folks.
Yes. And then what I'm going to do for the base is I'm actually not going to thin the wash and put that on.
Just directly.
Just directly. So there's a little bit more of the pigmentation to it. I'll give it a nice brown tone. For sure.
And this is still the umber, yes?
Mm-hmm. Still umber. Umber is one of those washes that's a good go-to for sure with adding more details to your minis if you want to bring out the recessed areas more. Especially if minis that are of lighter tones. The black wash is great for darker toned minis. Umber is great for ones that are more like tans and taupes and that type of color situation. So you don't mute the color too terribly much. Let's see here. Keep this going. Get right between the legs again. There we go.
Right.
There we go. And that'll dry and I'll give a nice tan color to your base. All right, now I'm going to rinse my brush from the umber and switch over to sepia. The chat's still helping out. Most excellent. All right, so with the sepia, we're also going to want to thin that out as well. Although now that I'm saying that, before I say that, let me see how the sepia goes. I haven't used this particular bottle yet. I may not thin this out.
No?
Because mine is actually rather runny.
Okay.
So you can see already, look at that. That's actually the right consistency.
Soy sauce.
So, yeah, soy sauce. So I'm not going to thin out mine because mine is actually thin enough.
I think mine might be okay too, actually.
Yeah, okay, so great. So I'm just going to start putting this onto, starting from the top and letting it work its way down. Let gravity work with you. when it comes to applying washes. And this is going on the gold dragon Wyrmling. All right, so I purposely did one wing. So this is the one wing with the wash on it. And that's the wing without the wash. So you can see there is a difference. There we go. You can see this side by side with the wash, without the wash. Wash on, wash off.
Oh yeah, this works really well with the gold.
Yeah, it's a great one. Yep. Yeah. It's good for like those brighter warm tones for sure. That's why I wanted to be sure we use that instead of the umber, because the umber would have muted it more. And I'm going to be careful not to put it too close to the horns and the eyes because I don't want them to turn yellow. Oops. Let a little blob go. There we go. If you ever need to remove wash quickly where you don't want it to be, just take another brush that is clean and it'll wick it away for you if you catch it soon enough. The upper wing. This is always the fun part. And I think I might even add this to the flame effect, honestly. Because it's a nice... Yeah. I can always do it on mine first to make sure it looks good before you do it on yours.
Well, thank you.
The important thing when you're doing a wash is to make sure you keep moving it across the mini because it will puddle and pool sometimes on you. And you don't want it to collect it too much into those puddles. So you can always just take the puddles and move the sepia or the umber wash around a little bit more. Or like I said before, if it's just too much, you can take a dry brush and use that to wick away the excess wash on your mini.
Oh yeah, he's got a little reservoir in his tail.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't he?
Yep, that's what I keep going back to and just pulling that down and further out of the way. But here it is with the sepia wash on it.
Now, are you hitting his belly with the sepia wash?
I did. I did put some of the sepia wash down on his tummy to make sure that went through. But now we have a proud little gold Wyrmling dragon right there. Do the QVC spin. Lovely. Yeah, see, that's fun. I love the texture in his wings. That's a lot of fun to bring out. All right, I'm going to try this, make a little bit more of that sepia wash out, and see how it looks on the flame effect. I think I don't go too ham with it. We shall see. Moment of truth, folks.
And while you're doing that, did you say to put a little sepia wash on the base as well?
If you want to, you could. Or you could do another round of umber.
I'm going to try. Mix in a little sepia.
Oh, yeah, I do like that on the flame. That looks good. Not too crazy, but just to get it down into the recesses. It gives it more of like a little glow. So yeah, I'm going to put that onto my flame effect.
I too.
Awesome.
I will follow your lead.
Oh, good. The fun part will be we can each take pictures of these once they're dry and share them and tag each other.
You bet.
And people can see the end results. Just enough to get this on here. Yeah, I like how that makes it look. There we go. That looks nice and fiery. So what's the sound you make again if you get hit by something that's burning? I love it. Fantastic. There we go. Oh yeah, I like that definitely with a wash on it. That's fun. Awesome. How are you doing? You all set?
I think I'm good. I think this dragon is done.
Lovely. So let me actually put the paintbrush down. So here we have the flame effects and the Wyrmling. Mm-hmm. And then we have our treasure pile as well for our proud little fellow. Oh, I love it. So it is important that when you are done with your miniatures, let me get it sort of set up so we have that. So when you finish your miniatures, it's important, especially once you have done a wash, give them time to dry before you even try to seal them up. I do recommend sealing your minis though. For this particular mini, I would absolutely recommend at the very least you do a satin finish seal coat on it so that it keeps that shine to it. You can also do a gloss if you want it to look really very much metallic. And also for the flames, I would do the gloss on there as well. If you go something more matte, it is going to mute the tones and bring the shine down. So I would say in this case, avoid a matte. But Vallejo does offer various types of seal coats that you could put on to your miniatures. Or if you have something else in your home that you use for your minis, then again, you could do satin, you could do gloss. I would stay away from matte in this particular case, but always, always, always make sure your miniature is completely dry before you go in to seal them, because if you try and seal a miniature that is still somewhat damp in some spots, guess what? You're going to crack and you're going to have paint that flakes off. We don't want that. That's not good. So that is my last little tip for our miniature. But I do want to say, Mark, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having me.
This was so enjoyable. I learned a lot, like with the voice acting stuff. I didn't know the whole different sound things. That is so very cool. And I enjoyed hearing about your history with D&D and mini painting and everything like that. So would love to do this again with you some other time, or hopefully our paths will cross. We can do it at a convention, because that would
be in real life, as they say.
That face to face without screens, that would be a whole new concept, wouldn't it? But also thank you to everyone who hung out with us in the chat tonight. Do be sure to check out the description down below. We have lots of good links for you in terms of getting your hands on this particular miniature, as well as other information for you. And this is going to be up for video on demand afterwards. So if you know a friend who wanted to see this but missed it, just tell them, hey, that's okay. Come back to the channel and watch it whenever they can. That being said, I am Vee Mus'e. I am a WizKids staff member, and I am very excited that we got to do this tonight. And Mark Meer has joined us and loaned his talents as a mini painter as well. Everyone else, please take care of yourselves. Be good to yourselves. Be good to each other. And we'll see you on the flip side on social media, and we'll update you with pictures of our little gold dragon wyrmlings. Until then, take care, everyone, and good night and goodbye.